Jiwon Park sat in the cold metal chair and tried not to show her anger. The council room on Nexus Prime was huge, with tall walls that seemed to go up forever. Strange lights hung from the ceiling, casting weird shadows on the faces of the alien delegates who looked down at her. She had been Earth's ambassador for 5 years now. 5 long years of listening to the same complaints and demands from creatures who thought humans were nothing more than clever animals. Today was no different. The Velkari delegate, a tall being with blue skin and too many arms, was speaking, again about how humans needed more rules. The Primitive Species Protection Protocol must be expanded, Thexmol said in his cold voice. His 4 eyes never blinked as he stared at Jiwon. Humans have shown they cannot be trusted with advanced technology. Their expansion beyond 3-star systems is forbidden. The other aliens made sounds of agreement. The Zephyrians, who looked like living crystals, hummed in harmony. Their leader, a creature that sparkled like broken glass, nodded its geometric head. The hive minds clicked their mandibles together, a sound like breaking bones that always made Jiwon's skin crawl. Jiwon kept her face calm. She had learned long ago not to react when the council spoke about humans like they were children, but inside, her heart was beating fast with rage. 3 star systems, 3 tiny spots of light in a galaxy that had billions of stars. And even those 3 were watched constantly by alien ships. "Ambassador Park," said the council leader, a floating jellyfish-like creature called Nexus Prime. "Does Earth accept these new restrictions?" Jiwon stood up slowly. She was the only human in a room full of beings who could crush her world with a thought. But she was not afraid. Not anymore. "The United Earth government will review your proposal," she said in a steady voice. It was the same answer she always gave, the same polite, careful words that bought them more time. Thexmol made a sound like laughter, but there was no humor in it. "Review? Always reviewing, never deciding. This is why your species needs guidance." The other delegates murmured their agreement. They had heard this conversation before. For 30 years, ever since humans first left their solar system and met the galactic community, it had been the same pattern. The aliens would make demands. The humans would ask for time to think. Then the humans would agree to whatever the aliens wanted. It was a game, and everyone knew the rules. Everyone except the aliens had no idea that humans had been playing a completely different game the whole time. Jiwon touched the small device hidden in her jacket pocket. It looked like a simple communication tool, but it was much more than that. With one press of a button, she could send a message that would change everything. But not yet. Not quite yet. "We will have an answer for you within 1 standard month," she said. The council dismissed her with waves of tentacles, claws, and crystalline appendages. They were already talking about other matters, other species that needed to be controlled. Humans were just one item on a very long list. Jiwon walked out of the council chamber and through the long corridors of Nexus Prime. The space station was a marvel of alien engineering, but it felt like a prison. Everything was designed to remind smaller species that they were guests here, tolerated but not welcome. She passed other ambassadors in the halls. Most avoided eye contact. The few species that were allowed to have real power looked through her, like she was invisible. The ones who were controlled like humans gave her sympathetic looks, but said nothing. Everyone knew that the walls had ears, and speaking against the council was a quick way to lose what little freedom their worlds still. Wed, in her private quarters, Ji-won finally let her mask drop. She sat at her desk and put her head in her hands. 30 years of this. 30 years of biting her tongue while aliens decided what humans could and could not do. 30 years of watching her people be treated like pets who sometimes got too clever for their own good. She activated her secure communication system and waited for the encryption to stabilize. When the green light came on, she began typing a message that would be bounced through 17 different relay points before reaching Earth. The aliens thought they monitored all human communications, but they were wrong about that too. The message was short and simple. The children have forgotten their manners. Time for a lesson. On Earth, in a bunker deep beneath the Antarctic ice, General Hyejin Lee received the message. She read it twice, then deleted it completely. She had been waiting for this signal for years. Hyejin walked to her secure terminal and began entering codes that would activate systems across human space. Hidden programs came online. Secret facilities that had been disguised as research stations began powering up equipment that had never appeared on any official reports. Dr. Min-ho Kim was in his laboratory when the alert came through. He looked up from the quantum field generator. He had been adjusting and smiled. Finally, after decades of careful preparation, it was time. The lab around him looked ordinary enough. Computers, testing equipment, the usual tools of scientific research. But behind hidden panels were weapons that would make the Galactic Council's worst nightmares seem pleasant. Technologies that had been developed in secret, tested in the dark. Spaces between stars where no alien eyes could see. Minho had spent his entire career studying alien technology. Every device the Council had shared, every piece of equipment they thought was safe to give to humans, he had taken apart and understood. But more than that, he had improved on their designs, made them better, made them dangerous. The aliens thought humans were good at copying things. They had no idea that humans were even better at making those things into weapons. Across human space, other people were receiving similar signals. Captain Dae-hyun Choi on the patrol ship Determination. Professor Yoonbi Song in her lunar research facility. Thousands of humans who had been waiting patiently for this moment. They had all played their parts perfectly, acting grateful for the scraps the Council threw them, pretending to be amazed by alien technology that they had surpassed years ago. Smiling and nodding, while beings who thought they were superior explained things that human children could understand. Maybe Galaxy was about to learn that there was a difference between patience and weakness. The Council had made the mistake of thinking they were the same thing. Ji-won looked out the window of her quarters at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, in the darkness between worlds, humanity was preparing to remind the galaxy why apex predators were called apex predators. The silence was about to end, and when it did, the galaxy would burn. The demands came like hammer blows, one after another, each one worse than the last. Captain Daehyun Choi stood on the bridge of the UES Determination and watched Valkyrie ships move into position around the trade route to New Seoul Colony. Their hulls gleamed with weapons that could turn his ship into scrap metal in seconds. "Sir," said Lieutenant So Young-han from her station, "they're demanding we submit to inspection again. Third time this week." Daehyun nodded but said nothing. The inspections were just harassment now. The Valkyrie would board human ships, tear apart cargo holds, and delay shipments for days while they searched for weapons that did not exist. At the least, weapons they could find. "Comply with their request," he said quietly. "Send the standard message." So-young's fingers moved over her console, but Daehyun could see the tension in her shoulders. She was young, only 25, and had joined the space service thinking she would explore new worlds. Instead, she spent her days watching aliens humiliate her people. "Captain," called out Ensign Jai-ho from communications. "Message from Colony Command. The supply convoy to Haven's Rest was turned back again. That's the 4th time." Daehyun closed his eyes. Haven's Rest was one of the agricultural colonies that fed the outer settlements. Without regular supplies of genetic material for their crops, the colonists would face starvation within months. The Council knew this. They were using hunger as a weapon. The Valkyrie boarding party arrived an hour later. They stomped through the ship with their heavy boots, knocking over equipment and leaving messes for the human crew to clean up. Their leader, a massive creature with scars covering his blue skin, looked at Daehyun with barely hidden contempt. "Your cargo manifest shows medical supplies," the Valkyrie said. "These will be confiscated." "On what grounds?" Daehyun asked, though he knew it was pointless. "Potential dual-use materials. Human medicine could be converted to biological weapons." It was nonsense, and everyone knew it. Human medical technology was decades behind what the aliens used. But the Council had learned that they could make any excuse they wanted, and humans would have to accept it. After the Valkyrie left with half his cargo, Daehyun returned to his quarters. He activated his personal terminal and began writing his daily report. But this report would not go through normal channels. Hidden in the routine supply requests and crew updates was a coded message that told a very different story. On the agricultural world of Haven's Rest, Director Jiho Nam stood in a field of dying crops and felt his heart break. The plants that should have been green and healthy were brown and withered. Without the genetic boosters that Earth sent every month, the modified crops could not survive in the alien soil. His daughter, Mina, was only 8 years old, but she understood what the brown plants meant. She had asked him why the pretty aliens in their shiny ships would not let the food ships come to their world. Jiho had not known what to tell her. The Council called it the Primitive Species Resource Management Protocol. They said it was to prevent humans from becoming too dependent on technology they did not understand, but Jiho knew the truth. It was punishment for humanity's refusal to hand over their military secrets. What the Council did not know was that Jiho's agricultural research station was much more than it appeared. Hidden beneath the greenhouse domes were manufacturing facilities that had been building weapons components for 15 years. The fertilizer mixers were actually assembling quantum resonance charges. The irrigation systems were testing targeting computers for orbital defense platforms. Every human colony had similar secrets. Every research station, every mining operation, every peaceful settlement was a hidden fortress waiting for the signal to reveal itself. That signal was getting closer every day. Professor Yunbi Song worked late into the night in her laboratory on Luna. The moon's low gravity made certain experiments easier, which was why the Council had allowed humans to build research facilities there. They thought human scientists were studying basic physics and maybe developing better ways to grow food. They were wrong. Yunbi's latest project was a breakthrough that would change everything. She had solved the problem of quantum resonance field manipulation, something that had puzzled alien scientists for centuries. The applications were endless. Better computers, faster than light communication, and most importantly, weapons that could bypass every known form of shielding. Her assistant, Dr. Kang Min, entered the lab carrying a cup of coffee and a worried expression. "The Council passed another resolution today," he said. "They want all human research data transmitted to Nexus Prime for review." Yunbi smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Let them review what we choose to show them. They still think we're children playing with toys we don't understand." Kangmin nodded and returned to his workstation. Like Yunbi, he had spent years developing technologies that the aliens could not imagine. His specialty was adaptive combat algorithms, computer programs that could learn and evolve faster than any alien mind could follow. Across human space, the pressure was building. The Council had decided that 30 years of gradual control was not enough. They wanted complete submission, and they wanted it now. On the industrial world of New Busan, factory workers watched alien supervisors shut down production lines one by one. The Council claimed that human manufacturing was inefficient and needed to be optimized by alien experts. In reality, they were crippling human industry to make Earth's colonies completely dependent on alien trade. In the asteroid belt, miners were forced to turn over their entire output to Zephyrian trade ships. The crystals they dug from space rocks were used to build alien technology, while humans were left with scraps and empty promises of future payment. On Earth itself, protesters gathered in major cities demanding that their government stand up to the Council. They were met by police armed with alien-made weapons and told that resistance would only make things worse. Most people believed this. They had no idea that their government had been preparing for war since the day first contact was made. Admiral Sungjin Yu reviewed the daily reports from across human territory and felt his anger grow. The Council was pushing harder and faster, now testing to see how much pressure humanity could take before breaking. They thought they were dealing with a weak species that would eventually collapse under the weight of their demands. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In hidden bases scattered across human space, weapons systems that had been secretly developed for decades were finally ready for deployment. Ships that looked like ordinary transports were actually carriers for technologies that would redefine galactic warfare. Research stations that appeared to be studying plant growth were manufacturing explosives powerful enough to crack moons. The aliens had made one critical mistake. They thought they understood humans because they had met human diplomats and scientists. They had never met human soldiers. That was about to change. The pressure was building toward a breaking point that the Council could not imagine. They had spent 30 years teaching humanity to hate them, and now they were about to discover that humans were very good students. The galaxy was about to learn that when you corner a predator, it doesn't surrender. It attacks. The medical convoy was halfway to New Jeju Colony when the Valkyrie warships appeared. Captain Sun-Ho Kim watched his sensors as 6 alien vessels dropped out of hyperspace directly in front of his small fleet of transport ships. The cargo holds were full of medicine and medical equipment desperately needed to fight the plague that was killing thousands of colonists. "This is Valkyrie Fleet Commander Gothron," came the harsh voice over the communication system. "You are transporting illegal materials. Surrender your ships for inspection." Sun-Ho looked at his navigation officer, Lieutenant Ewan Park. They both knew there was nothing illegal in their cargo. The Valkyrie were just looking for an excuse to delay the medical supplies even longer. Every day they waited meant more people would die on New Jeju. "Valkyrie, Commander, we are carrying medical supplies to treat a plague outbreak. We request safe passage under galactic humanitarian law." The response came in the form of energy beams that tore through the first transport ship. Sun-Ho watched in horror as the vessel exploded, taking its crew of 12 and enough medicine to save hundreds of lives. "Warning shot," Gothron said with cruel satisfaction. "Next ship that moves without permission will be destroyed completely." But the convoy could not stop. The plague was spreading faster every day, and the colonists had maybe a week before. Their medical facilities were completely overwhelmed. Sun-Ho made the only choice he could. "All ships, emergency acceleration. Run for the colony." The Valkyrie ships opened fire immediately. 17 medical transports died in the next 10 minutes. Their crews vaporized along with supplies that could have saved thousands. Only 3 ships escaped to reach New Jeju, carrying barely enough medicine to treat a few hundred patients. Over 3,000 human souls were lost that day. Men and women who had dedicated their lives to helping others. Doctors and nurses who had volunteered to carry medicine to dying colonists. Engineers and pilots who just wanted to do their jobs. Among the dead were 43 children traveling with their families to the new colony. The news reached Earth within hours. Admiral Sung Jin-yu sat in his command center beneath the Antarctic ice and read the casualty reports with a face carved from stone. Around him, his staff worked in silence. Everyone knew that something fundamental had just changed. General Hyejin Lee entered the command center carrying a datapad with the official response from the Galactic Council. She set it down in front of you without a word. The Council's message was brief. "Regrettable incident. Human ships failed to follow proper inspection protocols. No further action required." You read it twice, then looked up at the faces of his senior staff. These were people who had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. Scientists, engineers, and soldiers who had worked in secret for decades to give humanity the tools it would need when the aliens finally pushed too far. "Activate Emergency Protocol 7, he said quietly. the room erupted into controlled activity. Communications officers began sending coded signals to every human world and outpost. Hidden bases that had pretended to be research stations for years suddenly came alive with purpose. Weapons systems that the aliens had never imagined began, powering up across human space. Commander Yuna Kim received the signal at a facility that appeared to be studying stellar formation in the Outer Rim. In reality, the base was a weapons testing ground where humanity's best minds had been developing technologies that would have given the Galactic Council nightmares. She walked to her command console and entered the codes that would reveal what the station really was. Walls slid away to reveal missile launchers aimed at nearby trade routes, sensor arrays that had been disguised as radio telescopes turned toward alien patrol routes. The research vessel docked at the station opened up to reveal engines and weapons that belonged in the nightmares of Galactic Council war planners. Across human space, similar transformations were taking place. The mining colony on Asteroid, Belt Station 7 revealed orbital defense platforms that had been built into the rocks themselves. The agricultural domes on Haven's Rest split open to show manufacturing facilities that had been producing advanced weapons for 20 years. No. The moon, Professor Yunbi Song activated the quantum resonance project that she had been developing in secret. The peaceful research laboratory became the control center for a network of communication systems that could coordinate attacks across the entire galaxy faster than light could travel. Dr. Minho Kim stood in his hidden command center and watched. Status reports flow in from secret facilities across human territory. Every base was reporting ready. Every weapon system was online. Every piece of technology that humanity had developed in 30 years of careful preparation was finally ready for use. The aliens had taught humanity many things over the years. They had shared their technology, thinking humans were too primitive to truly understand it. They had shown off their weapons, believing humans were too peaceful to copy them. They had demonstrated their tactics, assuming humans were too simple to improve on them. They were wrong about everything. Specialist Tae-Hyung Lim sat at his targeting computer and uploaded the final attack coordinates. Every alien patrol route, every council facility, every Valkyrie stronghold was now marked on his screens. The information had been gathered over decades by human ships that had pretended to be simple traders and explorers. The aliens thought they had been watching humans. They had no idea that humans had been watching them back. Captain Wonjin Jung received his orders aboard what appeared to be a simple cargo transport. The ship's hidden weapon systems came online as he changed course toward the nearest Valkyrie base. His crew had trained for this mission for 15 years, but they had never been allowed to use their real capabilities. Today, that changed. Across the galaxy, other human ships were receiving similar orders. Vessels that had spent decades pretending to be helpless were about to show their true nature. The aliens had grown comfortable thinking they knew everything about human capabilities. They were about to learn that they knew nothing at all. The Galactic Council had made one final, fatal mistake. They thought that because humans had endured 30 years of humiliation and control, they would endure it forever. They believed that a species that had never fought back would never learn to fight at all. but humans had been fighting long before they ever left Earth. They had fought each other, their environment, and every challenge the universe could throw at them. The aliens had just given them 30 years to learn how to fight an enemy they had never faced before. The council chambers on Nexus Prime continued their daily business, unaware that the galaxy was about to change forever. The delegates discussed new restrictions on human trade and debated whether to allow humans to colonize one more star system. They had no idea that humanity had already claimed 100 systems in the dark spaces between civilized worlds. They did not know that human weapons were already aimed at every major alien facility in the galaxy. The silence that had protected humanity for 30 years was about to end. And when it did, the galaxy would discover what humans were really capable of. The storm was coming, and the aliens who had created it were about to be swept away by forces they could not understand or control. Humanity's patience had finally run out. The message that Ambassador Jiwon Park sent to the Galactic Council was exactly one word long: no. 3 hours later, the galaxy learned what that word really meant. Fleet Admiral Cheong Park stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution and watched her fleet drop out of hyperspace above the Velkari homeworld. Around her, ships that had pretended to be simple patrol vessels for decades revealed their true nature. Hulls that had looked ancient and primitive split open to reveal weapons that should not have existed. The Velkari defense fleet was waiting for them. 50 warships with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Their commander, High Admiral Kexmore, sent a message that was broadcast across the galactic communication network. Human ships, you are in violation of 17 galactic treaties. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Cheong smiled and opened a channel to her entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Park. Today we stop pretending to be weak. Today we show them what humans really are. Fire at will. What happened next redefined every alien species' understanding of warfare. The human ships moved like living things, twisting and turning in ways that should have been impossible. Their hulls bent and flowed, absorbing energy blasts that should have vaporized them. Weapons emerged from surfaces that had appeared solid, firing beams of energy that cut through Velkari shields like they were made of paper. High Admiral Kexmore watched his flagship's shields collapse under an attack that seemed to come from nowhere. The energy beam that hit his ship was not just powerful, it was intelligent. It adapted to his defenses faster than his computers could adjust, finding weaknesses that should not have existed. Impossible, he whispered as his ship began to die. Around him, how do they have this technology? The answer was Dr. Kangmin Oh, whose adaptive combat algorithms had been installed on every human weapon system. The computers controlling human weapons could learn and evolve millions of times faster than any biological mind. Every shot they fired was smarter than the last. Across the battle zone, Velkari ships found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. Human vessels appeared inside their formations, having somehow bypassed every sensor and early warning system. When the aliens tried to retreat, they found human ships waiting for them at their destination. Commander Wonjin Jung materialized his ship inside the Velkari stronghold on Rigel 7. The dimensional fold technology that Professor Yumbi Song had developed allowed human ships to step through space like walking through a door. The Velkari had built their base inside an asteroid, thinking it was impossible to attack. They were wrong. Wanjin's ship appeared in the center of their command center, its weapons already charging. The alien defenders had no time to react before their entire facility was turned into floating debris. Similar attacks were happening across the galaxy. Human ships appeared inside Zephyrian crystal cities, their sonic weapons shattering the living rock that the aliens called home. The crystalline beings had thought their cities were indestructible. But engineer Soman Lee had spent 15 years learning how to make crystal sing until it shattered. The hive mind worlds found their collective consciousness networks hijacked by quantum viruses that Dr. Jongin Kim had been developing in secret. The insects that shared a single mind across billions of bodies suddenly found that mind turned against them, their own thoughts becoming weapons that destroyed them from within. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council finally understood what was happening. Thexamol stood in the emergency session chamber and watched reports flood in from across civilized space. Every major alien facility was under attack. Every council stronghold was being systematically destroyed. "How is this possible?" demanded the Zephyrian representative, her crystalline voice cracking with fear. "They are primitives. They have no weapons, no technology. They have been lying to us," whispered the hive mind delegate, its voice speaking for 1 trillion terrified insects. "For 30 years they have been lying about everything." The truth was worse than lying. Humanity had never hidden their true capabilities because the aliens had never bothered to look. Every piece of technology the Council had shared, thinking it was safe, had been improved beyond recognition. Every limitation they had placed on humans had been quietly bypassed. Every restriction had been ignored, while the aliens congratulated themselves on their control. Dr. Minho Kim sat in his command center and watched the real-time reports from across the galaxy. The weapons he had spent 30 years developing were performing exactly as designed. Alien technology turned against its creators. Council strongholds falling faster than their defenders could call for help. But this was not random destruction. Every target had been carefully chosen. Every attack was precisely calculated to cause maximum damage to the Council's ability to wage war while minimizing civilian casualties. Humanity was not interested in genocide. They wanted to send a message. That message was simple. The children had grown up, and they were not happy with their parents. Captain Daehyun Choi led the assault on the Velkari trade routes that had been strangling human colonies for months. His ship, the Determination, revealed weapons that could track individual enemy vessels across light years of space. The Velkari convoy that had been carrying stolen human cargo never had a chance to surrender. Lieutenant So-Young Han, now promoted to commander, coordinated the attack with precision that amazed even her human allies. The tactical computers she was using could calculate the movement of thousands of ships simultaneously, predicting enemy actions with accuracy that bordered on supernatural. The aliens had made one crucial error. They had assumed that because humans were newer to the galactic community, they were less advanced. They had no idea that being new meant humans had no outdated technology to hold them back. While alien civilizations struggled with equipment that was thousands of years old, humans had built everything from scratch using the most advanced techniques they could develop. General Mingyu Seo coordinated the simultaneous strikes on 17 Council strongholds from his mobile command ship. Each attack was perfectly timed to exploit the specific weaknesses of each alien species. The Velkari faced electromagnetic weapons that turned their biomechanical implants into torture devices. The Zephyrians found their crystal bodies vibrating apart at frequencies they could not resist. The hive minds suffered the worst fate of all. Their shared consciousness, which had been their greatest strength, became their greatest weakness when human quantum viruses turned their collective mind into a weapon against itself. Billions of insects found themselves receiving orders to destroy their own colonies. Within 6 hours of the first attack, the Galactic Council's military power had been reduced by 70%. Within 12 hours, most of their major installations had been captured or destroyed. Within 24 hours, the aliens who had ruled the galaxy for centuries were sending desperate messages to Earth, begging for mercy. Admiral Sungjin Yu read their pleas for negotiation with cold satisfaction. For 30 years, humans had begged for fair treatment and been ignored. For 30 years, they had asked for basic rights and been denied. For 30 years, they had tried to find peaceful solutions to problems that the aliens had created deliberately. Now, it was the aliens' turn to beg. The galaxy had learned a fundamental truth that humans had known for centuries. The most dangerous predator is the one that has been pretending to be prey. Humanity's silence had ended in exactly the way that anyone who truly understood humans should have expected, in fire and fury that would reshape the galaxy forever. 3 weeks into what the galaxy would later call the Human War, the surviving alien leaders finally understood the scope of their mistake. General Mingyu Seo stood on the command deck of his flagship and reviewed the reports flowing in from across civilized space. The numbers told a story that would have been impossible to believe just a month ago. 73 Council strongholds destroyed. 15 Velkari fleet bases captured intact. 8 Zephyrian crystal cities converted into human military installations. The hive mind collective consciousness had been so thoroughly corrupted by human quantum viruses that entire star systems of insects were now following human commands instead of their own queens. But the true horror for the aliens was not the speed of their defeat. It was the precision of it. Dr. Sua Kang worked from her laboratory on Luna, coordinating the cyber warfare campaign that had turned the galaxy's communication networks into weapons against their former masters. Her quantum computers could process information faster than entire alien civilizations could think, predicting their moves and countering them before the aliens even knew they had made a decision. "Target acquired," she announced to her team. "Zephyrian command node on Rigel Prime, initiating frequency modulation attack." Her weapons were not ships or missiles. They were sound waves calibrated to specific frequencies that would cause Zephyrian crystal bodies to resonate until they shattered. The aliens had thought their crystalline nature made them invulnerable to most forms of attack. They had never considered that their greatest strength could become their greatest weakness. On Rigel Prime, the Zephyrian Grand Council was meeting in emergency session when the attack began. The ancient crystal formations that housed their leadership began to vibrate at frequencies that seemed impossible. Within minutes, beings that had lived for thousands of years were crumbling into geometric dust. The attack was so precise that only military targets were affected. Civilian Zephyrians found themselves unharmed, but their government and military leadership simply ceased to exist. It was a level of surgical precision that should have been impossible, but humans had spent 30 years studying every detail of alien physiology and technology. Ambassador Minwoo Che delivered the human ultimatum to each surviving council species from the bridge of a ship that had appeared in orbit around their homeworlds without triggering any defensive systems. The terms were not negotiable, and the aliens knew it. Complete withdrawal from all human territory within 72 hours, he announced to the terrified Velkari leadership. Reparations equal to 50 years of trade income. Recognition of the Terran hegemony as the dominant galactic power. Unconditional surrender of all military assets. The Velkari High Command tried to negotiate. They offered partial withdrawals, limited reparations, shared governance of disputed territories. They still thought they were dealing with a species that could be reasoned with, bargained with, controlled through clever words and diplomatic manipulation. They were wrong. The response came in the form of their capital city's power grid being systematically shut down by human hackers who had been inside their systems for decades. Every alien military base found its computers infected with viruses that turned their own weapons against them. Defense satellites began firing on the installations. They were supposed to protect. Dr. Yejin Bey had spent 20 years developing the social engineering protocols that made this possible. While the aliens had thought humans were simple traders and scientists, she had been mapping every detail of their communication networks, their command structures, their technological weaknesses. The invasion had not begun 3 weeks ago. It had begun 30 years ago, the moment humans first made contact with the galactic community. Captain Jinha Lee commanded one of the human fleets that appeared in the hive mind core systems. His ships moved through space with a coordination that seemed impossible, each vessel anticipating the other's actions with perfect precision. The aliens watched in horror as human formations flowed around their defenses like water around rocks. The secret was the quantum communication network that Professor Yunbi Song had developed. Human ships were connected by instantaneous communication links that allowed them to act as a single organism spread across light years of space. While alien fleets struggled with light-speed delays between their ships, human vessels could coordinate their actions in real time. The hive minds, who had thought their collective consciousness gave them an unbeatable advantage, found themselves facing an enemy that could think and act as one across the entire galaxy. Commander Jinwoo Park led the assault on the last major Velkari stronghold in the Outer Rim. His ship, disguised as a simple transport for 30 years, revealed weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in local space. Gravity became a weapon that crushed enemy ships without leaving a mark. Time itself was slowed around Velkari formations, leaving them helpless while human vessels moved at normal speed. The technology came from Dr. Sun-Hee Kim's temporal research project, hidden beneath what the aliens thought was a weather monitoring station. While the Council had been congratulating themselves on limiting human scientific development, she had been learning to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. Within 6 weeks of the first human attack, the Galactic Council formally dissolved. The surviving alien leaders met on a neutral station to sign the surrender documents that Ambassador Yejin Cho had prepared. The terms were harsh but not cruel. Humans were not interested in ruling over conquered populations. They wanted security, respect, and guarantees that no species would ever again try to control them. The age of council dominance is over, Yejin announced to the representatives of dozens of alien species. You will withdraw from all human territories. You will pay reparations for 30 years of oppression. You will recognize human sovereignty over our chosen regions of space. The aliens signed without argument. They had no choice. Their fleets were destroyed, their governments were in chaos, and their people were beginning to understand that the primitive humans had been playing a game that was far more complex than anyone had imagined. Admiral Seo-Hyun Cho established the new Terran Defense Fleet with ships that combined human innovation with captured alien technology. The vessels that emerged from human shipyards were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They could travel faster than light without using hyperspace, communicate instantly across unlimited distances, and deploy weapons that could reshape matter at the quantum level. The galaxy's former rulers lined up to join the Terran Commonwealth, seeking protection under humanity's banner. The species that had once looked down on humans as primitive children now begged to be accepted as junior, partners in the new galactic order. Dr. Hansel Nam archived the final reports on humanity's rise to galactic dominance. The analysis was simple. The aliens had made the classic mistake of confusing patience with weakness, cooperation with submission, and diplomacy with surrender. They had taught humanity to hate them, and then they had given humanity 30 years to learn how to express that hatred effectively. The galaxy had learned too late that the most dangerous enemy is the one you have taught to fight you. Humanity's true nature had never been aggression or conquest. It had been adaptation, learning, and preparation. The aliens had created their own destroyers, and now they would live in the shadow of the empire they had forced humanity to build. The silence was over. The age of humanity had begun. 6 months after the first human ships revealed their true nature, President Hyun-woo Kim stood before the assembled representatives of 300 alien species on New Geneva. The planet had been a simple farming world before the war. Now it was the capital of the Terran hegemony, the new power that ruled the galaxy. The Great Hall was built from materials that had once belonged to the Galactic Council. Velkari biosteel formed the walls, Zephyrian crystals provided the lighting, and hive mind computation matrices ran the environmental systems. It was a message that everyone understood. The old order was gone, and its pieces had been used to build something new. We tried peace, Hyun-woo said, his voice translated into every known language by computers that could process thoughts faster than any biological mind. We offered cooperation. We sought mutual understanding. You responded with chains. The alien delegates sat in silence. Many of them represented species that had once held seats on the Galactic Council. Others came from worlds that had been conquered by the Council centuries ago and were now free for the first time in generations. All of them understood that they were witnessing the birth of a new age. Never again, Yunwu continued, will any species face the systematic oppression that humanity endured. Never again will the strong be allowed to crush the weak simply because they can. The galaxy has a new guardian now, and that guardian remembers what it felt like to be helpless. Director Aaron Moon stepped forward to present the new Galactic Accords. The document was everything the old council system had pretended to be: fair, just, and protective of smaller species' rights. The irony was not lost on anyone present. Humanity's empire was more benevolent than the benevolent council had ever been. The Accords guaranteed every species the right to self-determination, protection from larger powers, and access to technology that would improve their people's lives. In return, they would accept human leadership in galactic affairs and contribute to the common defense against threats from outside the galaxy. Admiral Seo-hyun Cho commanded the new Terran Defense Fleet from her flagship, a vessel that incorporated technologies from every species in the galaxy. Human innovation had taken alien designs and improved them beyond recognition. The ships under her command could travel across the galaxy in hours, communicate instantly with any point in known space, and deploy weapons that could reshape reality itself. But the fleet's most important mission was not conquest or control. It was protection. The galaxy was full of species that had been oppressed by the Council, and now they looked to humanity for the security they had never known. "All ships report ready," announced Captain Ji-yoon Park from the bridge of the THS Liberator. Around her, displays showed the positions of human fleets across the galaxy. Every trade route was protected, every colony world was defended, and every species that had joined the Terran Commonwealth knew that help was only hours away. The former Council species had been given a choice: join the new order as equals or face the same isolation they had once imposed on others. Most had chosen to join. The Valkyrie had disbanded their military castes and become explorers and scientists. The Zephyrians used their crystalline technology to build beautiful cities that any species could visit. Even the hive minds had learned to cooperate with individual consciousnesses, creating new forms of hybrid thinking that benefited everyone. A few had chosen exile. These species retreated to the edges of the galaxy, nursing their hatred and planning revenge that would never come. Humanity monitored them carefully, but did not pursue them. The new empire was built on consent, not conquest. Dr. Jisoo Nam compiled the final reports on Project Prometheus, the 30-year operation that had prepared humanity for galactic dominance. The statistics were remarkable. Over 10,000 secret research projects, 500 hidden military bases and weapons technologies that were centuries ahead of anything the aliens had imagined. "Objective achieved," she wrote in her conclusion. The galaxy now understands that patience and kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. Humanity's true nature was never aggression. It was preparation. The transformation had been remarkable. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years now worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Worlds that had been strip-mined by the Council were being restored to their original beauty. Technologies that had been hoarded by the powerful were now shared freely with anyone who could use them. On Earth, children learned about the old days when aliens had ruled over humans like masters over pets. They found it hard to believe that their people had once been considered primitive and weak. In their schools, they studied alongside young beings from dozens of species, all of them equal citizens of the Terran Commonwealth. Lieutenant Colonel Minjun Song visited the memorial on Luna, where the names of all those who had died in the medical convoy attack were carved in quantum crystal. 3,000 souls who had given their lives for the cause of healing others. Their sacrifice had been the final straw that broke humanity's patience. "You didn't die for nothing," he whispered to the memorial wall. "The galaxy is better now, because of what you suffered." The memorial was not just for humans. It honored all the beings who had died under Council oppression over the centuries. Humans remembered that they had not been the only ones to suffer, and they were determined that no one would suffer the same way again. Professor Kyu Hyun Bai published his study of the war's aftermath in the journal that had replaced the old Council's propaganda publications. His analysis was simple. Humanity had won not because they were stronger or smarter than the aliens, but because they understood something the Council had forgotten. Power that exists only to maintain itself eventually destroys itself. True strength comes from protecting others, not controlling them. The former Council members who had survived the war found themselves living in a galaxy that was safer, freer, and more prosperous than anything they had created in centuries of rule. Some of them admitted privately that humanity had succeeded where they had failed. Others nursed their resentment in exile, unable to accept that the primitive species they had looked down on had surpassed them in every way that mattered. Ambassador Sujin Lim established diplomatic relations with species from outside the galaxy, beings who had watched the war with interest and wanted to know more about the new power that had emerged. Some came in friendship, others with challenges, and a few with threats. All of them learned the same lesson the Council had learned. Humanity was no longer the weak species that would accept whatever treatment others decided to give them. The galaxy had been transformed from a place where the strong ruled the weak into a community where everyone had a voice. It was not perfect. No government ever was. But it was just in ways the old Council had never even attempted. Children who had grown up under Council oppression now had hope for the future. Scientists who had been forced to work for alien masters could now pursue knowledge for its own sake. Artists who had been censored could express themselves freely. Traders who had been cheated could do business honestly. The age of Council dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun, and with it came something the galaxy had not seen in a very long time: hope. Dr. Jisoo Nam closed her final report with words that would be remembered for generations. "We did not seek to rule the galaxy. The galaxy forced us to rule it. Now that we have this power, we will use it to ensure that no one ever again has to endure what we endured. This is humanity's promise to the universe. The strong will protect the weak, not exploit them. The silence had ended in Inferno, but from those ashes had risen something beautiful, a galaxy where every being could live free.